Well, a new governor takes charge in Mint Street, and I have been discussing with Dr. Arvind Virmani, Neeraj Gambhir of Nomura, Shyam Srinivasan of Federal Bank, and Dr. K.C. Chakrabarty, former Reserve Bank Deputy Governor. What should be the agenda of the next governor? Well, Shyam, the digital piece, banking licensing is on tap. A unified payment interface is here and about to evolve. And then there are this welter of payment and small banks that will come into their own. What does all this mean in terms of responsibility for RBI, both in terms of supervision and regulation?
I think the supervision part will increase. Regulation, there's not much that needs to be done. Supervision will be in the area of principally security and how this whole development of payments is going to happen, because what the infrastructure is quite significant now. The ease of payments is increasing. Right now it's heavily person to person. How does it become more person to business to make it more increase the utility of it? So over the next, I think between now and March of 17, the big agenda will be once the UPI gets to full flow, how does that translate into possible risks to the system if there are any, what vulnerabilities that they are coming through, and how does that, and RBI is already talking of cyber security in a big way. They're talking of setting up an IT wing looking at security in a massive manner. So I think it will be more intense in terms of supervision. That's on one side. The other is the infrastructure that is formed in terms of the various payment banks and the surround around that will make this space a lot of new discovery will keep happening, because in the process existing banks are not going to sit quiet. So you will see a fair amount of development of innovative stuff. And that's why I keep saying the supervision aspect will become more intense. Okay. But this is a fascinating space that is opening up.
Okay. Well, Dr. Chakrabarty, what's your sense? Bandwidth of the Reserve Bank to regulate ever many microfinance institutions which are becoming small banks and more banks coming in. Will that be a very important chapter of the next 3 years?
You see, look, all this will be important. But you see, when you are discussing the role of the governor, what I think that if we want to make the regulation supervision effective so that the banking system meet or subserve the needs of the economy and society, I think we have to make the revolutionary changes. First, our regulation have certain basic limitations. It is not ownership neutral. It is not neutral on time and space. We need to bring neutrality in the regulation. Then our regulation, globally the regulation is either rule-based or principle-based. In our case, regulation is discretion-based, which is very dangerous. We need to change that type of regulation. Now, once we change the regulation, we have to distinguish what is regulation, what is supervision. Now, if we say more intensive supervision, it is just not possible. But globally, the regulators are moving towards the risk-based supervision. So we have to bring the risk-based supervision. Then we have to improve the information system. I think this is one topic of discussion separately. We need to make revolutionary changes in this area, and then comes the what type of institution can Reserve Bank do all these jobs together. I think a separate committee is necessary to find that what should be the mandate of the Reserve Bank, what should Reserve Bank do, what Reserve Bank should not do. It is a much wider agenda. I
agree with you, sir. So let's postpone discussing that, but come to a slightly different issue, or a larger issue. Dr. Virmani, you know, there are these welter of institutions, and as Shyam says, as the payment interface starts getting more financial inclusion and more consumer loans get given, probably based on big data and analytics, does financial stability, will it fall as a big item on the next governor's agenda?
Well, you know, I have long argued that at least for 10 years, that if we really want to get inclusion of the public, let me start with that. You need to facilitate telephone payments and banking. Now the UPI, you know, for long the RBI resisted because they said it's too risky. So the UPI is kind of a response to this objection that direct payments will increase the risk to the whole system. So in that sense, I think it's a good innovation, it's a good compromise. But we know that, you know, you cannot eliminate all risks, so you have to manage it. And the whole point, which also relates actually to your earlier question on bonds, something we've learned from the global financial crisis, is that it's the complexity which hides the risk which is most dangerous to the system. You know, we talk about too big to fail, but underlying that was a complexity where people just didn't know what the risks were, whether it's a single institution or it's across institutions. So yes, in a broad sense, this monitoring and managing of risk, making it more transparent and making, I kind of agree with what Dr. Chakrabarty said, and making the provisioning and so on linked to objective measurements of this risk is really quite important, because it is impossible for any central bank to kind of monitor personally everything. Having said that, I will just add one more thing.
Yes, sir.
Is that when you get more digitized, you also have digital means of checking. So in that sense, the RBI as regulator can also develop the digital means of monitoring, and therefore that to some extent takes the human element out, which is quite difficult to manage the larger the system.
That's a whole lot of interconnected problems as the bond market evolves, the ability to monitor that. But Neeraj, one important piece that might fall on the next governor's agenda, which is perennially there for all governors, the external risk. We are at a time when yields are at historic lows, indicating probably depression economics, and yet equity risk valuations are at near all-time highs. What might be the agenda of the next governor in that sphere?
So I think a constant vigil around what the markets, globally markets are doing. We are seeing a very unprecedented time in the human history as far as monetary policy is concerned. You know, a substantial part of bond market is yielding negative returns globally, and that's quite interesting to see as to how it will evolve. Also, we could have a lot more volatility in the markets as and when a major central bank like US decides to substantially increase its rates. So, you know, all of these things are still evolving. I don't think anybody has a very clear idea as to how these variables will evolve over a period of time. There could be, you know, lurking risks as and when some of these things change. So a constant vigil and fortification of our own, you know, financial system against this risk is going to be an important agenda. In that context, you know, what kind of reserves do we carry? You know, what kind of monetary policy? How synced up should be our monetary policy with the rest of the world? I think these are the issues that need to be continuously debated, and they have to be, in a way, on top of the agenda. In the same context, you know, given the fact that the world is printing so much money and we are seeing so much of liquidity, it's fairly easy for us to get a substantial amount of these capital flows that could end up overwhelming our market. So that, I think that a guard against that is also extremely important in the current context. So, you know, these issues have been around in one form or the other for the last few years, but in the current context, they become even more meaningful.
All right. Unfortunately, out of time, and we didn't discuss the big elephant in the room, NPAs, over which the new governor will continue to have to keep his vigil, as well flex his muscles and ensure that the stand taken by the Reserve Bank continues. But I think the most important agenda, as laid out by Dr. Virmani, will be that the conventions and the position taken by the Monetary Policy Committee will be an important agenda that the next governor has to take on. Of course, the other things continue: expanding the banking system, supervising it correctly, and hopefully evolving the corporate bond market as well. Gentlemen, you have laid out a very difficult and multifaceted terrain for the new governor. Let's see how things progress from here on. Thank you very much for joining me in this edition of Indianomics.